They brought her across the ice at first light. 11 riders in Ilmir gray and one small figure in the middle of them, who would not be carried. I had told my men she would arrive frightened. Brides sent to end a war usually did. I had stood on the walls of Coldford through 100 such dawns, waiting for enemies, for envoys, for the long lines of the wounded, and I knew how people looked when they crossed my ford, believing they were crossing into the jaws of something. They rode low in the saddle. They kept their eyes on the stones. She kept her eyes on me. I felt it before I understood it. For 11 years I had carried an old spear wound low in my left side, a hard knot of pain that woke with the cold and slept with the fire and never once, in all that time, fully let go of me. I had learned to walk around it the way a man learns to walk around a stone in his boot. It was simply part of what it cost to be the gray wolf of the gray reach. The morning she crossed my ford, it stopped. Just stopped, between one breath and the next, as her small gray figure came off the ice and onto my stones. The ache that had ridden my side through 40 battles let go of me, and I stood at my own gate with my hand pressed to a place that no longer hurt, and I did not understand what had happened to me. I only knew that the woman my enemies had sent as the price of peace had, before she spoke a single word, taken away a pain I had stopped believing would ever leave. My steward leaned close. "The bride, my lord." "I have eyes," I said. They stopped their horses at the foot of the gate stair. The captain of her escort, a hard old Ilmir man with frost in his beard and hate in his face, swung down and lifted his arms to help her from the saddle, and she said something low to him, and he stepped back. She dismounted on her own. She was not tall. She came up the wet stone stair with her chin level and her hands folded, and the whole gray weight of my fortress leaning over her, and she stopped in front of me and looked up into the face that had emptied whole villages, and she did not flinch. "My lord of the gray reach," she said. Her voice was quiet and even. "I am Linnet. I am told I am to be your wife." Behind me, I heard my war council shift. They had come down to the gate to see the hostage. That is what they had wanted from Ilmir, not a bride but a hostage, a highborn woman to keep in my keep as surety, a knife held to the throat of a treaty. I had known that. I had let them believe they would have it, because it was easier than the argument, and because until this morning I had believed it myself. Now I looked down at the small, upright woman in travel gray who had walked up my stair alone, and I found I could not remember why keeping a woman as a knife had ever seemed like a thing I would do. "You are told wrong," I said. Her chin did not move, but something behind her eyes did. Wariness. She had been sent expecting a monster. She was not fool enough to relax because the monster spoke gently. "My lord, you are not to be my wife because you are told," I said. "You are here because 2 old men who have never bled decided your life for you and called it peace. That is not peace. That is a debt paid in a person." I heard my own counsel go very still behind me. "You will come inside out of the cold, and you will eat, and you will be given rooms that lock from the inside with the only key. And tomorrow, or the day after, or the day after that, when you are warm and rested and not standing on my ice with 11 of my men and 11 of yours watching your face, you will tell me whether you wish to stay." The captain of her escort made a sound. "My lord, the terms." "I know my terms." I did not raise my voice. I have never needed to. "The terms are that the war ends. They do not say by what road. I am offering the road." I looked back at her. "The other road, if you want it, is your own horse and an open gate and my safe conduct to the border. You would not be the first thing to cross my ford. You would only be the first I let go." For a long moment she said nothing. The wind came off the frozen river and pulled at her gray cloak. Somewhere below us the ice groaned the way it does at winter's turning, when the thaw is still weeks off but the river underneath has begun, in secret, to remember that it is a river. "You would send me home," she said at last slowly, "having received nothing." "I would have received the end of a war," I said. That is not nothing. Men I love are alive because of the paper your uncle signed. I do not need to keep a woman in a tower to make that true. She studied me. She had a still face, my Linnet, in those first days, a face that gave you exactly as much as she chose and not one thing more, and I would come to love it more than I have ever loved anything. But that morning it only told me that she was thinking, and thinking hard, and that whatever she had braced herself to endure at Coldford, it had not been kindness. Kindness had knocked her off her feet in a way cruelty never could have. "I am cold," she said finally. It was not agreement. It was not refusal. It was a small true thing offered in place of the large false things people usually gave me. "You said there would be a fire." "There will be a fire," I said, and I stepped aside from my own gate to let her pass. And that is how the woman they sent to be my hostage walked into Coldford as its guest. My counsel was waiting for me in the low hall when I came in from settling the escort. I had known they would be. Old Harn, who had carried my father's banner and now carried the weight of thinking I still needed managing. Dreve, my master-at-arms, who trusted nothing that came out of Ilmir and had good reason. And half a dozen of the lesser lords of the Reach who had lost sons to the border and wanted the border to keep bleeding until it had bled enough to satisfy them, though nothing ever would. "You gave her a key," Harn said. He did not shout. He was too old and too tired to shout at me any more. "You gave the Ilmir hostage a key that locks from the inside, and you offered in front of both escorts, my lord in front of their captain, to send her home." "I did. The whole point of the marriage." "The whole point of the marriage," I said, "was that Ilmir would not dare break faith while I held one of their highborn in my keep. That is the point you wanted. It was never mine." I unbuckled my sword belt and set it on the board and sat down heavily, and I noticed I could not help noticing that when I sat, the old place in my side did not catch and pull the way it had every day for 11 years. I have fought that border since I was 19. I have buried men I raised from boys. I am done buying quiet with cruelty. If Ilmir breaks faith, they break faith, and I will meet them in the field as I always have. But I will not do it by turning a woman into a chain. "She could be a spy," Dreve said flatly. "Then let her spy," I said. "Let her carry home the news that the Grey Wolf gave her a locked door and her own free choice. It is a poor secret. It will do them no harm to have it." Harn leaned on the table, "And if she chooses to go?" I looked into the fire for a while before I answered, because the honest answer had surprised me, and I wanted to be sure of it before I said it aloud. "Then I will let her go," I said, "and I will have lost something I did not know I had until this morning, and I will not speak of it again." They did not understand me. I did not blame them. I did not fully understand myself. I only knew that a woman had crossed my ford and 11 years of pain had let go of me, and that whatever that was, it was not a thing you could keep in a tower. She did not come down to the hall that first night. A servant brought word that the lady thanked me and would keep to her rooms, and I sent up a tray of the good bread and the winter apples and a jug of the mulled wine we made against the cold, and I did not go up, though I wanted to, because a man who has offered a frightened woman a locked door does not then go knocking on it. I slept badly. I woke twice with my hand on my side, checking, the way your tongue goes back and back to the gap where a tooth has been pulled. The pain was still gone. In the gray before dawn, I gave up on sleep and went up onto the walls, and that is where I found her. She was standing at the eastern rampart in her gray cloak, looking out over the frozen river toward Ilmir, and for one bad moment I thought she had come to look at the road home. Then I saw that she was singing. I did not hear the words. The wind took them, but I heard the shape of it, an old melody, slow and rising and falling like the country it came from, the kind of song that is older than the war, older than the border, older than any reason two peoples ever found to hate each other. She sang it quietly, to herself, for no one, into the wind above a frozen river at the ragged end of a long winter, and I stood at the top of the stair and did not go to her, because some things you do not interrupt." When she finished, she stood a while longer. Then she said, without turning, "You walk quietly for a large man." "It has kept me alive," I said. She turned. In the gray light she looked younger than she had at the gate, and more tired and less guarded, and I understood that she had not expected to be heard, and that being heard had cost her something. "What was the song?" I asked. She was quiet for a moment, deciding, I think, how much to give me. "A binding song," she said at last. "In Ilmir, when two houses that have wronged each other agree to stop a marriage, a treaty, an end to a feud, there is a singer who sings the binding. It is very old, older than the crown. My grandmother taught it to me and hers to her back and back." A small, bitter turn of her mouth. "I am the singer in my house. It is why they chose me to send. A binding song sung by its own singer," they said, "is worth 10 treaties. So they gave the singer to the wolf and told themselves they had bound the peace." She looked at me steadily. "You were not supposed to give me a key, my lord. You were supposed to make me endure, and I was supposed to sing the binding anyway, because a woman who has been given no other power will use the one she has. That was the plan. Mine as much as theirs. I have faced men with drawn steel, and felt less than I felt then." "And now," I said. "Now," she said, "you have given me a locked door and an open road, and I do not know what to do with either, because I did not prepare for kindness. I prepared to be brave. It is a different thing, and I was ready for the first and not the second, and it is," her voice caught just once and steadied, "it is harder, my lord. Kindness is harder to be brave against." The wind came up off the ice. Below us the river groaned its secret groan. "You do not have to be brave against me," I said. "That is the whole of it. That is all I am trying to say, and saying badly. I am the gray wolf. I know what that name means, and I have earned every dark thing in it. But I am not going to spend it on you. If you sing your binding, let it be because you chose the peace, not because you were made to. And if you cannot choose it, go home, and I will hold to the paper anyway, and Ilmir can keep its song." She looked at me for a long time in the gray light. "Why?" she said. I could have told her about my side, about the pain that had let go, about the thing that had happened in my chest when she came off the ice. I did not. It was too strange and too much, and she had had enough of men deciding things about her because of what happened in their own hearts. "Because I am tired of being the reason people are afraid," I said instead, which was also true. "Come down out of the wind. There is a fire in the hall, and the bread is good in the morning." She came down. It was the first thing she chose freely at Coldford, a fire and bread, and the company of the man she had been sent to fear, and it was small, and it was everything, and I have never in my life been so grateful for a woman agreeing to be warm. The days that followed were slow, and I will not pretend they were easy, because they were not. Trust is not a door you open. It is a road you walk, and we walked it a step at a time, some days forward and some days not. She kept the key. She locked her door at night, and I was glad of it, because it meant the choice was real. But the door opened earlier each morning, and by the end of the first week she was coming down to the hall of her own accord, and by the second she had begun to move through Coldford as though it might, one day, be a place she lived rather than a place she was kept. She was not idle. That surprised my people more than the key had. A truce bride, a high-born singer, they had expected to sulk in her rooms or drift through the halls like a grievance. Instead, she found the things that were broken and quietly began to mend them. She found the wintersick in the lower barracks and sat with them. She found that my kitchens and my granary were run by two men who had not spoken to each other in a year over an old insult, and within a fortnight she had them speaking, though I never learned how. She found the werewolves. I should say, the wolves of the Grey Reach are not tame, and they are not pets, and they do not, as a rule, suffer strangers. They are the old blood, the great gray hunters that run with my house, and they had let no one but me and my kennel master near them in years. The lead of them, a scarred old male called Ash, who had run at my side through more winters than most of my men had seen, would take the hand off anyone who reached for him without leave. I came into the lower yard one gray afternoon and found Lynette sitting on the cold stones with Ash's great head in her lap, and her fingers in the ruff of his neck, and the old killer's eyes half shut like a pup by a fire. I stopped dead. "He came to me," she said, not looking up, a little defensive as though I might be angry. "I did not call him. I would not have dared. He came and put his head down, and I could not very well refuse him." "No," I said. My voice did not come out quite even. "No, you could not." Ash had not put his head in a lap in 11 years. I did not tell her that. I was beginning to keep a small hoard of things I did not tell her, the pain that had let go, the wolf that had chosen her, the way the whole gray weight of my house had begun since she came, to feel less like a fortress and more like a home, because they all pointed at the same thing, and I was afraid to say the thing aloud in case saying it made it a chain, and I had promised her no chains. But I think she knew. She was not a woman it was easy to hide things from. One evening late, when the hall had emptied and it was only the two of us and the fire and old Ash asleep across her feet, she said without preamble, "Your side. You favor it in the cold, or you used to. You do not any more." I looked at her. "I have watched men come back from the border 11 years, she said. "I know an old wound when I see one, and I know when it stops. Yours stopped." A pause. "It stopped the day I came," Dreve told the escort captain. He meant it as a warning that the gray wolf had gone strange since the Ilmir woman crossed his ford. The captain told my maid told me. She met my eyes. "What am I, my lord, that I take away a man's pain by walking across his ice? Because I would like to know. I have been very brave about a great many strange things since I came here, but I would like, for once, to be told the truth of one of them." So I told her. I told her about the 11 years and the ache that never left. I told her about the morning she came off the ice, and how it let go between one breath and the next. I told her the old word for it, the word my grandmother's people had for the thing that happens once, if a man is very fortunate in a whole life. The recognition, the bond, the one the blood chooses and cannot unchoose. And I told her that I had not said it because it was too much to lay on a woman who had already had her whole life decided for her by other people, and that I had rather lose her to the open road than hold her with a truth she had not asked for. She was quiet for a long time when I finished. The fire burned down. Ash sighed in his sleep. "You are telling me," she said slowly, "that your blood chose me, that I am that this is," she gestured at loss between us. "And you have known since the gate, and you gave me a key anyway, and an open road, knowing." "Knowing," I said. "It is not a claim, Lynette. It is a fact of my own heart, and I will not make it your cage. The bond is mine to carry. The choice is still yours. It has always been yours. That is the whole of what I have been trying to build here, a place where the choice is really yours, so that whatever you decide, I will know it was true." She stood up. Ash lifted his head. She crossed to where I sat, and she looked down at me, this small, upright woman who had walked up my stair alone into the jaws of everything she had been taught to fear, and there were tears standing in her eyes, and she did not let them fall. "You great fool of a wolf," she said, very softly. "You have spent a fortnight proving I could leave. Did it never once occur to you to prove I might want to stay?" I did not have an answer for that. I have never before or since been so glad to have no answer. She did not sing the binding that night, and I did not ask her to, and that was right. It came later, and it came hard, because peace never arrives without someone trying to kill it in the cradle, and the ones who tried were not Ilmir in the end. They were mine. It was Dreve's cousin, a lesser lord named Corvin, who had lost 2 sons to the border and wanted a 3rd war to pay for them. He had never believed in the truce. He had wanted the hostage, wanted Ilmir kept afraid, and when he saw that I meant to make a true peace, a peace with no knife in it, a peace bound by a song and a marriage freely chosen, he decided that the surest way to keep the border bleeding was to make sure the bride never lived to sing. I will not give the night more words than it needs. They came for her in the cold before dawn, 3 of Corvin's men, at the 1 hour they thought the gray wolf slept. They had not counted on the locked door, which held long enough. They had not counted on old Ash, who slept across her threshold now every night and who took the first man down before he cleared the stair. And they had not counted on me, because I had not slept a full night since the morning her painstaking crossed my ice, and I came down the corridor in the dark like the thing my enemies had always feared I was, and it was over quickly, and none of them left Coldford except in the ground. When it was done, I found her standing in the wreck of her doorway with Ash bleeding at her side, and her own hand pressed to a shallow cut along her arm, and her face white and set. And I went to my knees in front of her, the gray wolf, on his knees in a cold corridor, and I took her hurt arm in my hands as though it were made of glass. "I brought you here," I said. My voice was not steady at all now. "I brought you here to be safe from a war and my own house." "Your own house is not you," she said, and then fiercely, with the tears finally falling, "Do you understand me, Roan? Your house is not you. A man built this. A man will answer for it. And she took a breath. "I am done being brave against kindness, and I am done pretending I have not already chosen, and I will not have you kneeling in the cold apologizing for a peace you have bled for. Get up. Bind Ash's shoulder. He saved my life. And in the morning I am going to stand on your walls and sing the binding, not because Ilmir sent me to, and not because you asked, and not because I was made to, but because I have looked at both roads for a fortnight, my lord, and I want this one. I want the ford and the wolves and the hard gray house and the great silent fool who gave me a key. Now get up." I got up. She sang the binding at dawn, from the eastern rampart, into the wind above the ford, and I stood beside her. And below us in the yard my people gathered, those who had wanted the war and those who had wanted the peace, standing together in the cold because a woman was singing a song older than all their reasons for hating each other. She sang it in the old tongue, and then, so that we would understand, in ours, and it was not about crowns or treaties or the price of a hostage. It was about a river that freezes and thaws and freezes and thaws, and is, underneath, always the same river. It was about the ice remembering in secret that it is water. It was about 2 banks that a ford can join. When she finished there was a silence, and then old Harn, who had told me a fortnight before that I was a fool to give her a key, old Harn, who had carried my father's banner, went down on one knee in the frozen yard, and Dreve followed him, and then the whole of Coldford, both sides of the border, knelt in the snow to a queen no one had sent for, and I stood beside the singing woman who had taken away my pain, and I understood that the war was over. Not on paper, in the yard, in the kneeling, in the song. Corvin's treason we answered as the law required, and there was no more of it after, because a man who wants a war needs other men to want it with him, and after that dawn on the walls there were none left in the reach who did. We were wed at the thaw, when the ice went out of the river and the ford ran free and bright between the 2 realms. She wore Ilmir gray, because she said she would not pretend to be anything but what she was, a bride sent as the price of a peace, who had stayed as its queen, and I have never seen anything I thought was more beautiful. That was many years ago now. I am old or growing old, and the border is a place traders cross now, both ways all year, and children who have never seen a war run on the ice in winter where I once buried men. Ash is gone these 3 years. He died in his sleep across her threshold, where he had guarded her every night of his long life, and we buried him above the ford, and she sang for him, and I was not ashamed of my tears. I still go up onto the eastern wall in the gray before dawn, sometimes, out of an old habit of watching. She comes with me now, most mornings, and we stand and look out at the ford where she crossed the ice a lifetime ago, and neither of us says much, because we do not need to. The old ache in my side has never once come back. I stopped waiting for it years ago, but I find I have not stopped being grateful that some cold morning before I knew her name, a small, upright woman who would not be carried walked up out of the river toward the worst thing her people knew, and chose, in the end, to stay and warm it. The ford freezes every winter and thaws every spring, freezes and thaws, faithful as a heartbeat. And every spring, when the ice goes out and the water remembers what it is, I take my queen's hand on the cold stone of my own wall and I think, she was the thaw. She was always the thaw, and I have never once, in all the years, wanted the winter back.